Governor Brown did away with the Enterprise Zone program, which was a vital program, especially for us here in the Valley. I can see where it maybe was misused in areas like San Francisco and possibly LA, but when you paint the broad brush and you exclude statewide, do you have any economic development incentive plans that would help the Central Valley?
Actually, the enterprise zones, redevelopment, there's one other, I think they were called empowerment zones too. They were misused throughout the state. And yet, when I was mayor, with then Mayor Ashley Swearingen, I led the fight to eliminate redevelopment and the enterprise zones. There's one other program, I'm trying to remember what it was, but I led that fight. And I did because I said, yes, okay, there's been some areas where it's been misused, but for every one of those, there are multiple areas where it's been a benefit to the state. He took those tools away in the middle of a recession, the time when we really needed them. So when I say that I'm going to focus on creating middle-class jobs, I'm going to focus on the place where I can get the most bang for the buck. The Central Valley, the Inland Empire, and large swaths of Los Angeles that are very poor. That's where you focus that. I tell people, notwithstanding that, the regulatory environment is really difficult, and particularly for small business. I mean, that's who the chamber represents. I mean, you know, the big Fortune 500 companies, which we don't have a whole lot of anymore, they can survive. But small business is struggling because, you know, our agencies, you know, I made, and I know you probably do as well, Mayor, I brought my agency head and said, your job is to help grow our economy. You got to make it work. You figure it out, not them. We got to do that with our agencies because a lot of them have fiefdoms and they're in silos and they say no a lot. You know, like the Russians in the SALT II agreement, yet. They say no a lot. We got to get them to yes and still protect our environment. You know, I was with some farmers and they were saying, hey, you know, I'm not for dirty water. I'm for clean water. I'm not for dirty air. I'm for clean air. I mean, you know, it's like this notion that, you know, farmers and business are somehow not for the environment. Our kids need clean water. The valley needs clean water. You know, we all know that. So from my vantage point, yes, we're going to bring it back, and we're going to bring it back on steroids. It is not just for Madera, for all places with high unemployment and high poverty.
Your city passed a minimum wage that escalated higher. And you talk about wanting to support and build small business. My industry is the restaurant industry. We are considered, I think, by the legislature, the low-hanging fruit for legislation. And now we're facing looking at the restrictive scheduling bill that would not only affect us, but affect other retailers as well. As we escalate and ramp up to the state $15 an hour, at some point somebody's going to say, this still isn't enough. What are your thoughts on how escalating that minimum wage helps small business?
I've been to farms in Salinas, in Watsonville, Bakersfield, in Fresno. I've talked to restaurant owners and small business people, and I know there's a great deal of concern about raising the minimum wage, the overtime bill, all of the new initiatives that really can hurt our small businesses and stymie their growth. I intend to make it clear to the legislature, and remember, You don't implement your vision. They're a separate branch of government, and I respect that. I was Speaker of the Assembly, and I do know how to count votes. And I also know that, you know, you have to speak with care. But I'm going to lay out a vision for the state that wants to move in the direction of growing our small businesses, addressing a broken regulatory framework. I think we need to bring in the stakeholders. What I hear from farmers a lot, small business too, but really the farmers up and down the state, not just here in the Valley, in Salinas and Coachella, is they're almost demonized. And, you know, really don't, their views aren't taken into account. And I want to bring them together. And, you know, someone was saying, who came with me and she's represented other legislators, she goes, you know, these people have never been on a farm like you go. I mean, you actually really do this, you know, you just go and, I said, well, I don't know anything about a farm. I grew up in a city, you know, I didn't even have a garden, you know, in my little apartment that we lived in growing up. But I don't have any understanding. I've never I've run a small business since I left office, but I wasn't familiar enough with those issues. But when I was mayor, I did convene them. If you talk to the chamber in LA, you'll talk to an organization that was on the other end of me, by the way, when I ran. They thought I was the Antichrist. You know, come out of the unions. I was, you know, progressive for sure, pro-union. I'm not against them, for them. But I'm also for growing our economy. So I'll convene a group to look at what's going on in the state, where we can fix some of, you know, the good intentions that have negative consequences. You know, as an example in your industry, you know, they tell me the stories of, you know, some of the servers in really high-end restaurants are making $80,000 a year. Making $100,000 a year. You know, I think everybody's for, let's lift the wages of the cook. I mean, the dishwasher and the people working in the back house. I mean, they, you know, but like you're making $80,000 a year, and then there's compaction, so they have to raise those salaries too. And the whole break and lunch issue, any of you understand, you know, the lawsuits, you get a private attorney general and they come at you if you don't take a break, and you've been taking a break and a lunch for, you know, for 10 years. I mean, you know, most of us give people breaks and lunch. I mean, who doesn't do that? And if you don't, shame on you. I told a guy the other day who was telling me stories like you just told me, a billionaire runs a big giant enterprise. He said he didn't give sick leave. I said, what? He said, we don't give sick leave. I said, well, you know, geez, it's hard for me to defend that. But then he told me that they have been doing breaks and lunch for a decade, and people have sued him now because they couldn't prove it. Fire that person, and now they come back and say, I didn't get breaks and lunches for 10 years, or whatever the amount of time was. So I think we need to bring folks together to tell these stories. And then, you know, I've always never been afraid of my bully pulpit. You know, the job of mayor doesn't always have nor governor. You know, you don't rule like an emperor. You lead. So you use that bully pulpit to say, you know what? I'm not signing bills like this. You got to show me there's a problem in the first place. I mean, is there anybody here? Raise your hand. Is there anybody here that thinks we have too few laws in California? Anybody? I mean, 1,300 every year, you know, oftentimes they're done in the dead of night, you know, not a lot of hearings, powerful interests get behind them and move them, and everybody votes in unison. Come on. So I'm just going to make it clear. I'm not for it. I'm for growing our economy. I'm a progressive. I'm also for lifting people up. I'm for growing middle-class jobs. But I'm not for, you know, just undermining the economy, so it's almost impossible to create wealth in the state.
You know, everybody knows problem number one,
Water.
freaking drugs.
Drugs?
Our kids, and I've seen so much damage and destruction, and my people want to know where do you step on drugs?
We definitely have an opioid epidemic in rural areas. We had a more serious crack cocaine and heroin epidemic in the urban areas, which have actually gone down. It's a big challenge for us. We're going to have to put a lot more resources in drug rehab programs, in really helping these people transition out of drugs. You're seeing it across the country, and it's certainly a big issue in the state. And, you know, I mentioned the prison pipeline. So many of the people in prison are there for drug offenses. You know, we could put them away, make them more hardened, keep them there. The cost of that to the economy, to the government, to the families, you know, it's just astronomical. And so I think we need to work a lot more on prevention and on creating a safety net to move them out of that.
The drug issue, you know, from a law enforcement perspective, Sacramento's become the biggest enemy to law enforcement. They've hamstrung our ability to enforce the laws to the point of making drugs almost not illegal anymore. You speak to treatment, but anybody that knows anybody that's an addict, you can't force them into treatment. And if you take the repercussions of their crimes away as leverage to get them into treatment, they're not going. And so they continue with their vices. And pay for those vices is usually theft and preying on the community. So how you as governor are going to address that? Because law enforcement's on its heels. We're coming out of the recession and we're probably at our lowest levels in 10 years. Meanwhile, they're making it harder for us to do our job. How are you going to make California?
Again, with Ashley Swearingen, I took on realignment. I told people back then, I wasn't against realignment philosophically. I was against the fact that they weren't giving us resources. You know, they were trying to save money, just like redevelopment. You know, you mentioned about, in Madera there wasn't problems with redevelopment and the enterprise zones. They were trying to save money. That's all they were basically shifting the responsibility for the budget on our backs, taking our money, our tax increment, to pay off their budget. That's what they did with realignment. And I told the governor back then, and I led the top 10 mayors, and I said, this isn't going to work. We got to have resources for mental health, for drug rehab. We got to be able to give us more cops, because you're going to have more people that are potentially going to commit crimes and go back. I wasn't philosophically against it. 47 and 57 come along, and I think we're all seeing, and you all have shared with me, and this afternoon I'm going to hear a lot more of that at lunch, that hey, you're hamstringing our ability to kind of deal with these things. I think we all got to acknowledge everybody. And by the way, that's one thing where there is bipartisan support. We were putting way too many people. We're giving up on people way too easily. We incarcerate more people per capita in absolute numbers than anywhere in the world. Come on. We want to graduate more kids, send them to college more than anywhere in the world. That's not something we all ought to be proud of. And so one party because of cost, and the other party because, well, let's just say both parties came together and said, we got to deal with this. And we do. But when everybody thought, when I got elected, in 2001, I was against the death penalty. I had taken on some of these draconian laws that we were trying to put 12-year-olds to death. You know what I'm saying? I mean, like, what country there was? And I did research. There were 3 countries in the world that did that, and they were all fundamentalist countries. You know, I mean, it's like most countries don't do that. And you know, I was challenging it. But I'll tell you something. As soon as I became mayor, in the middle of a recession, I understood. The public safety is our #1 job. You got to keep people safe. So I think what we need to do, I love these people. They make fun of the president and one party for not believing in science, right? They don't believe in climate change, and they don't believe in, evolution, and they don't believe in all of these things. And then on their end, they don't let the science or the evidence get in the way. So you're coming forward and showing people that, hey, there's a problem here, and they have a view, and they're going to continue with that view. And so what's going to be different about me is I am evidence-based. You know, we got to look at, if crime is going up, we got to figure out why it's going up, what we need to do, and not, to make sure it doesn't go up, not hamstring our cops. When I was mayor, I spent a lot of time with my cops. And I did, because I knew what a tough job they had, and I knew what a great job they were doing, take us from one of the most violent to safest. So I'm gonna, look, only one person, but you are the governor. I'm gonna slow it down. I'm gonna say, hold it, where's the evidence? Show me that there's a problem here. When you come to my office, and I know you will, I'm gonna say, give me the evidence. I'm going to take it back to them, and I'm going to say, this is what's going on. What are you going to do about it? Don't give me this solution, because this solution is for a problem that doesn't exist. Give me this solution for the problem that does. I've never been afraid, Damon, to take on powerful interests, whoever they are. Look, I'll end with this. I've been showing up and showing up and showing up. When I'm governor, I'll be back. There'll be times when you're happy with me, and there'll be times when you're not. There'll be times when you agree with me, and times when you don't. I believe that a leader has to be true to the man or the woman in the mirror. Has to be true to who they are. Has to be true to what they think is the right thing to do. But you got to listen. You got to work with everybody. You got to hear them out. You got to use the evidence. And one thing I can tell you about me over the years, I'll stand up even if I'm standing alone. I'm not afraid. There'll be a lot of people on the other end of me in this race. They're going to spend millions. They're going to make me look like a bad man. When they're through with me, unless you know me, you're going to say, man, I'm not for him. Did you hear? I think in the end, I'm going to come out on top because I'm straight with people. I don't lie to them. I am who I am. If I say I'm going to do something, I do it. I listen. Got hearing aids. I listen. Sometimes I have to go like this. I listen. I try to get better. I don't think I know everything. I'm not the smartest guy in the room, but I always have smart people around me. And you get elected to get things done. Not an ideologue. I want to be a problem solver. So I really appreciate that so many of you came today. I want to thank again the mayor. I know you're a busy man. For you to show up today and introduce me is a real honor, Lee. And just say to you, You know, the good news is they're all coming. They should. They should respect the fact there are a lot of really good people in this part of the state. They want their government to represent them, to fight for them, to invest in them. And, you know, my own sense is it's going to be a long, hard campaign. I tell people I feel like the guy pushing up a boulder up a mountain. And they get worried. And I said, no, don't be worried. I've pushed boulders up mountains before. I have broken glass ceilings. I understand that the job of a leader is to unite us, not divide us. It's to bring us together to a common goal. So thank you. It's a real honor to be here. I'm going to go see nobody asked me about high-speed rail, by the way, but I'm going to go see the high-speed rail project, which I am for. But I'm for it because I want to leverage it for economic development, connect the two engines of the California economy with the place in this state that needs to diversify its economy, that has affordable housing, that needs investment in infrastructure. So I'm going to go see there, and then I'm going to meet a group of law enforcement leaders for lunch. And then I got a couple other things, and then I'm back in LA about 12 o'clock at night or 1 o'clock in the morning, and San Diego in the morning, and, you know, I asked for this. Thank you very much.